Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator, and welcome back to another edition of Total Party Skills. Now, as you can see before me, I have a brand new copy of the Rifts Primer and Adventures. It's got a good price point for a Rifts book, so I'll just get that right off the bat. I would consider it not a waste of your money to pick this up if you are a game master who likes Rifts and other Palladium games. I have not focused so much on reading the adventures at the end of this book. I've mostly been focusing on how they present a how-to game master section and also what are the kind of resources they have. Oh, damn it. I'm going to have to start this whole video over now. I can't remember what I was going to say. How embarrassing. Oh, it's so unprofessional. But speaking of professional, it does got this really nice Kevin Long artwork on the cover. It looks like real classic Rift stuff right here. The first time I ever played Rifts when I was 14, the first character I made was an ice dragon hatchling. And I thought he was a little badass with all his mega damage and powers. He could teleport and shapeshift and breathe a cone of mega damage ice fire. And I rolled really well for his MDC. And 5 minutes into the game, one of these motherfuckers blew his fucking head off. And that was a valuable lesson to just, learning about role-playing games in general, and especially in Rifts, to not get cocky. So anyway, yeah, reading over their section on game mastering, it's not that any of it's bad advice. A lot of it's fairly good, straightforward advice, especially since there's some emphasis on the whole keep it simple thing. But there's something missing. I really wish, also, their regular Game Master Guide doesn't get into this either. But, of all things, I'm going to cite the 4th edition Dungeon Master's Guide. Now, yes, I know. We all hate 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons. It was the game that got me back into role-playing games after being away from the hobby for a while in my 20s. But after playing it a couple times, it chased me back to, you know what, Rifts is still around. I'm just going to play Rifts again. And the thing, though, that the Dungeons & Dragons Game Master's Guide does, though, really well, is it's one of the best Game Master Guides out there for its system that tells you the actual mechanics of what to put in your adventure so that the player characters can get through it and level up. Now, Palladium uses a radically different experience system. Your rewards for defeating enemies are pretty much minimal, and the number one thing to get experience is basically to come up with an extremely high-stakes plan that gets a lot of people out of hot water. So in terms of the mechanics of what you need to do to write a Rift's adventure is to not just come up with encounters. Combat encounters, even role-playing encounters, those are great, and you'll want them in there. But what you'll want to do is, because of the way that most of the experience rewards are fairly individualized, you want to see what the average amount of experience it's going to take for all your players to level up. So if it's all a bunch of first-level players, then you're looking at a number that's roughly around 2,000 experience that you want them to have at least a chance to get that much XP as they go through the adventure to level up. Which means you'll want at least, one villain who's a threat to your little local region. You'll want him to have some henchmen or some monsters that work under him as minor threats, up to 10, but you shouldn't need any more than that, especially for a first-level adventure. And what the real important thing is there's going to have to be a couple of scenarios that the players come across where a bunch of civilian, innocent people are at risk, and they have to be forced to come up with some crazy plan to save them. There's, it could be, the old classic school bus teetering on the edge of a cliff to, a big earthquake, and you got to figure out how to get people out from the rubble, or how to save a town from a rampaging army of monsters that's about to march right through there on the way to go do something else. Those this gives you a lot of emphasis on how to design plot hooks. Maybe it's just me. I do not find that terribly helpful. If you're the type of personality where you think you're willing to jump into the seat and be a game master or dungeon master or whatever you want to call it, I feel like, it's probably a good assumption that you are already interested in storytelling and might have some concept of how to come up with a plot hook. So, yeah, what this book's missing is what all Palladium books are kind of missing are, yeah, some mechanics. Oh, I remember what the other thing I wanted to say that I was looking into this is also this does make some attempt to further clarify the combat system, especially around range combat, which it does a bit. I overall, like I said, I actually do feel like this is a good purchase. It's probably a better Game Master's Guide than their actual Game Master's Guide. I'm sure the people who like, oh, copy paste are going to be annoyed by it. Look, Rifts has a ton of source books, and so every once in a while having stuff that compiles information from these various books into one thin, convenient tome is not a bad idea, and I don't mind that, especially when they're not like trying to overcharge you for that. I got this thing for less than 20 bucks, brand new. I'm sure if you dig around the internet or find the PDF or something, you can get it for an even better price. But yeah, I guess that's my thoughts on the Rifts Primer and Adventures. Overall satisfactory for what it is to get out of it, and the only thing that I feel is missing is that, yeah, it could use a bit more focus on just what the actual mechanical crunch of what you actually need to physically put into your adventure outline so that your players have some chance to level up. You know, a big flaw long observed about Rifts is that it's too much of a slow grind. It's based on that slower kind of experience leveling that you had in AD&D and original D&D, but because there's no scalable monsters, you can't be constantly throwing things at them that will earn them larger net XP awards as they go up to guarantee that there'll still be some sort of even pace to the leveling. You could play Rifts for years, and people would barely just be getting up to 5th level, especially if they're not encountering the right kind of scenarios. I mean, if they're off hacking and slashing their way through a Zytix colony, if no one's at stake and they're not actually having to like think on their feet to save people, they're not going to get the maximized experience possibilities. And if you're going to be game mastering and writing adventures and putting people through these scenarios, it is incumbent on you to make sure that stuff's in there, because helping your players level up is a core duty to the entire game if you're going to be the one running it, because it's part of their fun. So anyway, check out the Rifts Primer and Adventures if you're looking for some like plot hooks and tips. You know, like I skimmed through the adventure scenarios. Like a couple of them are good. Just, you know, like, at the risk of offending anyone who might watch this video, like really, I feel like Palladium lends itself better for campaign outlines than it does for specific adventure scenarios, with the one exception of Truck and Turtles. Truck and Turtles was badass. And I guess on that note, see you later. Hit like and subscribe. And remember to go